Reincarnation now.
I always have done. You've never asked me, so don't take the piss out of me. I've always believed that. That's what I believe. I don't have to have studied philosophy and religion
How does
like
that
you
fit
do.
with your Judaism?
David, just because somebody doesn't have a command of language that you do, or the intellectual way of wording it, because your parents were very good to you and they helped you study, and you studied really hard and you were a SWAT and you did fantastic your exams, therefore you're very erudite and you could express things. If I sometimes have a lesser way of being able to express things, because I didn't bother to do anything at school because nobody helped me to do that, doesn't mean I'm less intelligent or my beliefs are less valid than yours. I might not be able to explain it by which person the word karma first originates from, or as Chris says, it might be more Hindu, or Christopher did, than Buddhist. But these things I'm saying have always been these have always been my beliefs.
But you're Jewish.
So it doesn't make any difference to me. How does that square with your Jewish religion? Very easily with me.
I wasn't aware that Hinduism and Judaism sort of went together.
Why not?
One is a monotheistic religion, one is a multi-theistic religion.
It makes no difference to me.
So which god of Hinduism do you follow?
I don't have to follow a god of Hinduism because I believe... I don't have to follow any of those gods because I believe in karma. Why do I have to follow any of those gods?
It's a very confused position.
Well, it might be to you, but it's very clear to me. It's very, very simple to me.
So what do you think you'll come back as?
I don't think I'll come back as anything. I wouldn't possibly know till I get to the spirit world.
Oh, so you're a spiritualist as well?
David, I'm
no,
just...
but the spirit world doesn't exist in Hinduism.
Of course it does. They call it something else. Of course it does. Otherwise they wouldn't believe in reincarnation. You go back to the essence, the spirit. Like I say, I haven't studied the religions the way you do, so I might not be using the terminology that appeals to you, but you go back to the essence, the spirit. It's not heaven or hell. It's not purgatory. It's just that if you haven't learned the lessons that you were due to learn on this life and you've been what you call sin, arrogance, a thief, a murderer, whatever, then you're not going to get to a higher spiritual level or be reincarnated. Then you're going to come back as a lower being or another human being and have to go through all the pain again. And just because I believe that doesn't mean I'm not proud to be Jewish. And if you can't get your head round that, that's what I regard as narrow-mindedness. But you regard it that I can't.
Well, I think it's slightly, I'm not saying it's narrow-mindedness, I think it's very confused.
Well, it isn't to me. Like you say that the one true path is clear to you. What I say is perfectly clear to me. So.
Are you clear on where Wendy sits?
I think you can be Jewish and not be... I don't think you can be devoutly Jewish and hold your opinions, but then you don't say you're devoutly Jewish.
No, not at all.
So that's
very...
fair enough.
You could be Jewish by race and hold her opinion, but you can't be Jewish by religion. It's
no, I agree.
Judaism is
I
not
just said,
I've
just said that, you know, if Wendy's not devoutly religious, but is of a Jewish descent, but she then believes in some form of reincarnation...
Then she doesn't believe in Judaism?
No. Doesn't believe in Judaism. That doesn't stop her being Jewish.
Which is her race?
Well, I'd really like you to be able to have a conversation with Odette one day, who's... I mean, I regard her as being able to express intellectual matters more succinctly than I do, but she doesn't think that about me. She's very... But the point is, she is the one with the religious, fairly religious husband, the mad husband who I've mentioned, etc., etc. And they follow Judaism, but she believes a lot of the things that I believe in. So there you have a dichotomy. She is more religious. She would say... She wouldn't say she was a devout, religious Jewish woman. Her children go to Jewish schools. They follow the Sabbath to a point.
They live a kosher household.
To a point.
They have the 2 sinks.
No. Those are very, very extreme cases. You have to be...
Actually not. I know several people who...
Well, they're religious then. And it's extreme. The 2 sinks and the whole kosher thing, you have to be... And anyway, the way I see it, because I learnt that from my mother, some people have things, as I call it, shoved down their throat, which Rachel did. She grew up in her parents' boarding school, which was the only Jewish boarding school in South Africa, and then therefore her mother was matron, Jewish, you know, head of the school, headmistress, etc. And they just felt that their life was miserable because Rebecca was obsessed with religion and all those things. So, you know, Rachel would say, don't want to know about all the trappings and all these things. So basically, people who might have two sinks could have learned that the Jewish people you know with two sinks is because maybe that belief about the sinks has been imparted from the mother before or whatever, the generation before. But to me, it's meaningless. It's pointless. Two sinks.
And two food bowls.
Yeah, I know all that. I mean, you can't, you know.
Why?
Don't teach your grandmother to suck eggs.
You'll have to. Do you mind if you explain to me about the two sinks?
Because
I don't know
kosher food, you can't eat meat and milk together.
Yes, I know that.
So religious people keep everything separate.
You can't
David
even store
doesn't,
it.
and David doesn't extent. So you could have. I've been into one Jewish household, which I was absolutely shocked beyond belief when I was at school. They almost had two separate. I mean, some people have separate kitchens. They can go to that extreme. So only milk products are in the one kitchen, and only meat products are in the other. That's the basic premise
but there are
of it.
quite a lot of Jewish people who don't.
Huge amount.
Who
Huge
don't
amount.
put
Follow.
milk in tea, for instance. Won't have dairy.
I know. Everybody.
But is that because the milk has been kept in the fridge where there might be?
No, it's because
meat?
they probably hadn't. Usually that comes from not eating milk after a meat meal. So
Okay.
if we had meat now and we had tea or coffee, and again David would call this cherry picking. I know people who aren't particularly, they don't go to synagogue on Saturday and they don't do the other things, but they might not put the milk in their tea after a meat meal. So there's nuances of what you take out of it. When I lived with my mum, obviously alone, my father is to me just a hypocritical bit British Jew, because my father kind of had this revolting, my grandmother was a tyrant of a woman, and all the sort of North London Jewish things. I mean, they sort of say they're kosher, but then they'll eat bacon sandwiches when they're out. And I mean, they didn't keep kosher kitchens and things like that, but my father was bullied and, you know, had a horrible upbringing. And they were very poor, they lived in the East End, you know, so that's why he was a bully. But before he left home when I was 10, he demanded that I went to Hebrew lessons, they're called Cheder lessons, at a synagogue. And I'd just sit there in my grandmother's synagogue, it's near Finchley, near Henley's Corner. And it was well, not Orthodox, but what's the...
Reform.
No, it's not Reform, it's more towards the Orthodox, but I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, it was just ghastly, because I've never connected with those people, I've never connected what's going on. And I just thought to myself, if I want to learn Hebrew as a language, which I did later, and I can now speak it, I don't speak it brilliantly, but I can speak it, because when I chose to learn it, I did. Just having it enforced on you, these sort of things that you're supposed to do. And then when I was in that synagogue, when I'd be dragged there for the religious festivals by my grandmother, all the women are upstairs talking. You know, the men sit separately, and often the women are upstairs, and they're all talking loudly about their hats and where they've got their designer clothes. So it's just, you know, I've just seen the pits side of it. So I didn't want anything to do with that. On the other hand, my brother went to Adrian, I don't know if you'd ever heard of it, it was a Jewish boarding school, a public school, called Carmel College.
Yes.
Which is now closed, and Adrian went there. And he was privileged in a way because, you know, there are a great number of very talented, artistic people, successful people, like Rosenthal, you know, playwrights and all sorts of people who went there. Which is why, you know, he is a marine biologist and I have no trade, as it were. But, you know, he studied well and he went there. And also, they were quite heavy on the religious side. So he hasn't taken any of the religion, but he chose to live in Israel, and you know he's anyway. You know, they are like Adrian and Rory were like candles on Friday night because it's such a lovely family time. It's great if the family can all be together and they enjoy that. But there's none of this. Most Israelis don't not drive on Saturday, or don't not touch money. You know, all the things. I mean, they just do normal living. Most, I don't know the percentage. And then the Orthodox ones, as I say, are just in a separate... They